Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tucker, and you kind of knew that I had to do it, right? I'm an NBA YouTuber. I have to do a winners and a losers list about a lot of different things, but I actually think that this is a really interesting one because this is obviously a completely unique situation that the NBA is entering into now as it relates to this new return to play plan. And I do think that there are teams and players that benefit from this, and then ones that are put at a disadvantage as a result of this new return to play plan. And that's what I'm going to talk about in today's video. But really quickly, before we get started, if you enjoy the NBA, then consider subscribing. I upload basically every single day. Okay, let's start it off on a positive note with a winner, and that is all of the extra invite teams. So the teams that are currently outside of the playoff picture, outside of the top 8 seeds in each conference, that are being invited to Orlando for those 8 games, then potentially a play-in tournament, and then potentially the postseason, depending on where the seeds end up. And the reason that they're a winner here is because I had anticipated and I had advocated, honestly, for the NBA to just go straight to the playoffs, keep their top 8 seeds on each side, save some time, and just go right into the postseason. And the fact that they're not doing that and then they're inviting these extra teams is obviously a huge benefit for them because it gets their players extra run. It's the possibility of them playing in a play-in tournament, potentially the postseason as well. And obviously there's plenty of benefits on the NBA as a league side as well, and that's one of the reasons they did it, because they wanted to get to a certain number of minimum game threshold for monetary purposes, as well as get, certain guys like Zion Williamson on TV a little bit more before his rookie season is over at whatever point that is. So definitely winners there for very obvious reasons are the teams that got an extra invite to the end of the NBA season. Moving on now to our first loser, and this one actually impacts the actual basketball games that are being played. And it's teams that are generally older or have stars that are older players. And here's my reasoning. I talked about this in yesterday's video. This is going to be a very condensed timeline in terms of the amount of games that are being played compared to what normally would be played in a regular season or in the postseason. When you're talking about 88 games, a possible play-in tournament for those teams that are going to be playing in the play-in tournament, and then a full postseason in 2.5 months, when typically the entire postseason runs for about 2 months. That's going to be difficult on some of the older players and or some of the players that typically struggle with injuries, either just in general or mostly in the postseason. So some players that come to mind here, LeBron James, even though he has continually shown this robotic-like ability to stay healthy and to be in incredible shape despite what is getting to be an advanced age. Something to keep an eye on how he's going to handle playing all of these games in a row. And then, of course, the Clippers come up as well, the team that I still think is the best team in the league and should be title favorites. Kawhi Leonard has never been the healthiest player over the last handful of years, and even last year during Toronto's title run, looked like he was running at about 85 to 90% by the time we got to the finals. And Paul George is in there as well. These are both guys that have been, kind of load managed throughout the season. And then one other name that sticks out as well is Chris Paul. This is a guy that, isn't going to be asked to do as much in Oklahoma City as he has maybe in Houston or in previous seasons with the Clippers, but still he has a way of just having these random injuries pop up in the postseason, and when you're playing all these games in a row, it increases the likelihood that that would happen again for him. So those players and teams specifically, in my opinion, are losers in this new scenario because of their advanced age or because of their potentially injury proneness. And then on the other side of that, as we move on to our second winner, that is younger teams / teams that have a lot of depth for many of the same reasons. When you're talking about a very condensed timeline, players that are younger, players that don't have as many miles and minutes on their bodies, and teams that have a significant amount of depth to play a bit of a longer rotation than they normally would in a postseason because they can, and because honestly they're going to have to for some of these teams because of how many games they're going to be playing. So for example, teams like the Mavericks, who are a sneaky, not necessarily contender team, but a team that can definitely pull off a big upset, because when you look at some of the advanced stats, the point differential, the Mavs are a very, very good team despite the fact that they are one of the lower seeds in the Western Conference, and it kind of plays into their hands here that they are younger with guys like Porzingis and Luka. Obviously Porzingis has had some injury issues, but still, and Luka's had some injury issues this year as well. Another team, the Milwaukee Bucks, have plenty of depth. Oklahoma City, minus the whole Chris Paul thing that I talked about, they have plenty of depth. They're young. And then Denver, the Raptors, and then I would even throw the Celtics in there as well with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. Teams that are generally younger and generally have more depth, I think, are going to be at a slight advantage in this new format because of the disadvantage put on the older players and the advantage put on the younger players with such a condensed timeline in which they're going to be playing all these games, whether it be regular season, postseason, play-in tournament, what have you. I think that's going to be something that's going to be really interesting to watch. If we see some players start to get tired midway through the playoffs, or we see, some teams perform better than others offensively because they have their legs underneath them, that might have something to do with the youth and this different kind of timeline that we're working with here with the end of this NBA season and the postseason. Moving on now to our next loser, and this is the home court advantage teams. And this was always a concern, right? How exactly the league was going to figure out a way to run, the end of the regular season, an altered regular season, and the postseason without home court advantage when you're playing it at a neutral site. How does that work? Because apart from who you're matched up with in the postseason, the point of regular season seeding is to decide who gets home court advantage, and specifically in the NBA as it relates to Game 7s and teams being so successful at home in Game 7s. That's a huge advantage to have if you're the 1 seed rather than the 2, or the 4 rather than the 5, whatever it may be. And to not have that is going to be not necessarily a disadvantage to the higher seeded teams, because in theory they should already be better and they should already win the games, but they're not going to have something that presumably they had worked for during the season and hoped to have by playing on their home court, playing in LA, playing, in Milwaukee, whatever it may be, for a potential Game 7, because that's happened a lot of times in NBA history where a team that's really good did get pushed to a Game 7 and they had it on their home court, and maybe if it was in a neutral site, they wouldn't have been as successful as they were in that situation. So that's going to be a really interesting thing to watch. There are some wild ideas being thrown around about what to and not to use as an actual home court advantage. I would hope that it would be a very subtle thing that the NBA would offer to teams with, as kind of compensation for not having home court advantage, whether it's picking what hotel they live in or an extra coaches challenge or something like that. I'm hoping that it's something subtle like that and not any of the crazier ideas that have been thrown around about how to mitigate this whole not having home court advantage thing for the higher seeds. Again, in theory, they're better. They're the higher seed. They should just win regardless. That's been my opinion about this entire situation. I don't care, if Mickey Mouse is in the stands or not. But still, it's going to be something to keep an eye on, where if we see a lot of higher seeded teams lose more than we normally would, it could be because they're older, but also because they don't have the home court advantage that they are typically used to in a 7-game series. And Game 7s could be way more up in the air than they ever have been in the past as a result. And then the last entry on this list, our last winner, is of course the NBA and NBA fans. Assuming that the league is able to do this safely and everything is put together properly, which I have the utmost faith in Adam Silver and the league that they're going to be able to do that. The fact that the NBA is back, the fact that basketball is back, the fact that we have live sports again on July 31st is going to be an awesome feeling. Again, I'm assuming that everything's going to go well. Everything is going to be passed the way it needs to be passed. They're going to have the proper protocols. Everything's going to be done safely. And it's going to be such a nice thing to have back for me, obviously, because there'll be some things to make content about other than historical things and looking back at different things. But it's a huge win, because I was incredibly pessimistic for the last 2 months about a lot of things, but mostly about the fact that the NBA would not be returning, and the fact that they were able to figure this out and come up with a plan that it seems is at least relatively viable and will create a situation in which everything seems pretty fair to the regular season teams that have returned, as well as in the postseason, assuming they're keeping the regular format, is certainly an accomplishment, again, assuming that they can do it safely, and something that is a huge, huge win for the league and for its fans. And obviously there are financial incentives here as well, and I'm sure that's what drove a lot of this and a lot of the push towards coming back. Not only the players want to play, but also there's plenty of financial incentive, whether it's TV money or otherwise. But regardless, for the long-term health of the league as it relates to the salary cap and the players being happy they get to play, as well as just the well-being of the fans and the ability to watch NBA basketball, these are all good things, and I'm very, very excited, and it's a huge win for the league itself, of course. And yeah, there you have it. That is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. I'd be really interested to see if you guys have any other winners and losers or a counter to any of the points that I made in this video about teams that are or not winners and losers, because I think there are multiple sides here. These are just kind of the sides that I fell on in terms of which teams and players might benefit or not benefit from this new return to play format that is going to be a very, very unique situation, and something that we're going to look back on in a couple years and be like, man, that's really weird that that's how everything worked out for the end of the 2020 NBA season. But yeah, like I said, that is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen, as well as subscribe and like the video if you want to see more. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.